You did. You joined it.
Oh,
You
good.
totally did.
Okay. Got it.
So let's see if we are live on Facebook. Sometimes it takes, there's a lag. So let's see if I can pull it up in my group and see it. Yes, we're live. Okay, cool. So I'm going to close that out so it doesn't confuse me. So we are live. Hello, Confident Women's Community. Julie Scott coming in here later with a special interview. I got somebody from the other side of the world coming in live with me. This is the lovely, wonderful, you're going to love her accent because I do, Kazs Olive. What a great name, Kazs Olive. She is a trauma therapist, and I'm going to let her explain to you what that means. So thank you so much for being here, Kazs. Take it away. What do you do?
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to let you come on your in your group and share as well. So thanks. Trauma therapist. So what I do is I help women heal from trauma from abuse, from abusive relationships or abusive family relationships, and help them to move through that trauma and grow and discover their power and their worth. Yeah, in a nutshell.
Wow. What great work you do. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you in here, because that kind of work is so needed. And I think that there's so much shame around that whole, experience for the people who have gone through trauma. It's like they want to, stuff it. They want to ignore it. They want to hide it. They're ashamed of it, whatever that is. And breaking the stigma of it, shining a light on it and helping them through it. I love that. I mean, thank you for the work that you do. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
How long have you been doing it?
Probably about 6 or 7 years now. So I first started off with my own trauma and healing that, and trying to find ways through, all the information that's out there to heal my own trauma, but really wanting to integrate the understanding that a lot of my spirituality had died along with, my sense of self-worth, and just unable to cope. And like you mentioned, the shame, burying all the feelings down, or just being really overwhelmed with it. So I had to find ways to integrate all of those things and heal everything in together, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. Wow. Yeah. So when I sort of learned along the way, it took me a while to navigate through all that information, but then I ended up working on a suicide line and helping people who wanted to suicide. So I did that for a year, and then I worked in a women's refuge. So I worked there, and then I ran a program, sort of frontline, alongside police to help women keep safe.
Oh, wow.
Through abuse. So I did that for about 5 years, and then I realized that there were some gaps there that I couldn't fill in that role. So I created my own program to help women to heal, and that's what I do today.
Oh my God, that is so amazing. Now I know that the types of programs you worked in the past are, they're addressing the same thing, but they're not coming at it from the way I'm thinking, the way you come at it with your program. I mean, how do you help them? I mean, what does your program bring to the table that the other work that you did, the gaps that you were talking about? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think a lot of the approach that's available is very feels really prescribed. It's not really organic, and it doesn't come from the point of view of how us as women are conditioned through patriarchy. So when we talk about trauma, so we're talking about like fight or flight response, and now recently there's the freeze, but we have another layer to that, just being women and how we've been raised, but also our makeup, just as as women, like who we are. So there's other social layers to that, you know, that usually tell us to keep quiet, shut down, don't speak up. Yeah, so my approach is really just helping us heal through that as well, and understanding what our responses are to our trauma, and that it's not, you know, you're not wrong, you're not, there's nothing wrong with you, it's what's happened to you is wrong. So I use a lot of self-compassion, because self-compassion really is the antidote to all suffering and trauma. So yeah, just lots of sort of little techniques and tips that really help us to really integrate back into our body and back into our soul, and help us to hear that inner wisdom again, just all through self-compassion.
That just, that warms my heart. I mean, it really is, it's such important work. I mean, and it's, you know, it's, I think I've said so many times, it's like if we all could just learn to love ourselves,
Yeah,
we could heal
yeah,
every problem in the world, right? I mean, and it's, you know, it comes back to that self-compassion, that, you know, just giving yourself, you know, the love that you know, and it's the same with the work that I do. I mean, you know, it's you know, you're working from a different angle, from, you know, working in a different area of trauma, but I mean, you know, the women that I work with too, the recovering people pleasers, like you said, I mean, we're taught to, you know, keep our mouths shut, to take care of others, to put ourselves last. And, you
last,
know,
yeah,
all of that is just so ingrained in it, you know, just to try and get a, the average woman to prioritize herself in her life. It's like, you would think I was speaking to them in, you know, a different language. They're like, what? And it's like, what do you
yeah,
mean focus? What do you mean take time for myself? What do you mean focus on me? I have too many things to do. I can't do that, you know. And, you know, and the thing is that what you're dealing with, because, you know, the trauma that happened, but then also all the other layers that I deal with too, because I mean, there's just the regular life stuff and the trauma
yeah,
too. So you've really got your
yeah,
work cut out for you. Wow.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's wonderful.
yeah. And you're right, like it's like asking for a left arm, you know, or a right arm, depends if you're left or right-handed. I don't know. Which one do you want most? I'll take that hand.
It's so true though. I
I
mean,
guess,
it's like the focus and attention that we put on everybody else is what we need for
yeah,
ourselves, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it, you know, it obviously it stems from childhood as well. So there's all these like faulty thinking beliefs that we have around our importance and our role. And like, I was raised in a really religious household, and yeah, it was. I remember it being beaten to me just about, not, you know, not physically, but mentally. It was God first, others second, and yourself last. And I took that on board, and yeah, sort of had carried that belief. But like you're so right, when we have the self-love within us, at first it might feel selfish. It might feel that we're, you know, oh, you know, look at me putting myself first. How selfish can I be? It should be the kids, should always put the kids first. But when we fill our cup, when we fill ourselves first, who doesn't want to be around somebody who's so full of love and light? You know, yeah, so then that just radiates to everybody else around us. And what a great example for our families and our children and our niece and nephews around us, that when we're operating from this more expanded consciousness of love and light.
Yeah, and also too, I think about, you know, like how many generations of women have been playing the same roles over and over and over. My mother, her mother, my great
Yeah,
grandmother, right? And it was passed down to me, only I woke up. Was it
yeah,
didn't happen until I was in my 40s, but at least I woke up, right? But I mean, and I
yeah,
also think that this work is, the work that you do in particular is so important to share with the younger generations, to break the cycle of, you know, keeping
yeah,
your mouth shut, not speaking your truth, not asking for what you want, and not
yeah.
feeling that you're valuable enough to even ask, right?
Yeah, exactly. But even to ask yourself, like one of the things that we do with self-compassion is I suggest people say things to themselves during the day, just, you know, because sometimes when we think of like, you know, self-care, think, oh, I don't have time for that. You know, how I've got to cut. Well, it sounds boring. That's why I want to sit on a mat and boring. But to start that process off, we could just take some time in our day just to ask ourselves questions like, how can I care for this? You know, how can I hold this precious life in my hands with even more care? How can what things can I say to myself to validate my experience? And so just even asking yourself these things in the day is going to really help us to bring that focus from, rather than being so external, like when you've gone through, like stress really keeps your life narrow, right? It really kind of constricts you. So when we in those stressful moments, or we're under attack, or we're feeling that, you know, we're experiencing abuse in our life, all our focus is always external. It's always on the outside of us. We're focusing on the abuser. That's a really good natural response to have when we're in that situation, because that's how we keep ourselves safe.
Right.
But yeah, as we kind of find our way to safety, usually we've come into that habit, like our thoughts and beliefs of those patterns have already been established. So we need to like switch it up and bring that focus back within us, because we often lose ourselves through those relationships. So just dropping into yourself like a best friend and asking, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Because we forget our feelings, because we've forgotten ourselves, because we're focused on everything else and everybody else and worried about the kids and walking on eggshells all day or whatever it might be. So yeah, bringing that focus back into our heart center is really important in our healing process.
And I hear you about, not them not wanting to take the time, because, I've created tools too that, just little things. And it's always the things that, if I tell somebody this will take less than 5 minutes, they'll do it. If it takes less than a minute, they'll do it, right? At least that, even if it's just something as simple as, inhaling for 5, hold for 5, exhaling, or just, sitting quietly just for a minute and getting in touch with your heartbeat. It's like, can you feel your heartbeat? Can you just sit and marvel at the fact that your heart's beating all by itself? You don't have to think about it. I mean, just little things like that. Like you said, that appreciation of this precious life. I love how you said that, because that is so true. And, life is so fleeting and it's so short. And I just did a post yesterday about how, it's just, I think so many of us live on autopilot, right? Like you said, those grooves or those grooves in our brain for what we always do is, every day is like Groundhog Day, right? It's like we do the same thing every day, yet we're not really present because we're living in the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're missing out on the beauty of life right now. I mean, and
yeah. Or we start panicking about the future, and then we've got anxiety, right? Because anxiety is often about worrying about what if, and stressing about the future. So being really mindful and present in this very moment. That's the beautiful silence and presence in between your in-breath and your out-breath. A little gap in between. Now that's that space of peace, and that's what we get from living in that present moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That I'm a big Dr. Joe Dispenza fan. I think we talked about this before, how he always talks about the generous present moment. And it's like the way he says that, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. I know we're going to do one of those retreats together, right?
Oh, I'd love to do that. Yeah.
I swear to God, we have to put that on the bucket list. Let's do it. I mean, seriously, that's on my list. Well, I want to learn a little bit.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, we've got to just think positive that this whole thing is going to lift, and we got to just feel into that freedom right now, so that we can help manifest this. I really believe that if we all just focus on freedom, we can manifest this. But I would love for you to, whatever you feel comfortable with, sharing a little bit about your story, that you think would be, because I mean, this group, I know so many women want to gain confidence, and I know you've had to gain confidence in yourself to be able to get to where you are now. And that's why I thought this would be such a great conversation to have in this community. So can you share a little bit about your journey and like how, however you want
Yeah,
to share it?
sure. Well, I guess I already mentioned that I was raised in a very strict religious family,
Sure.
and I have very good parents. I can't say that I had a terrible upbringing or anything like that. I was very blessed, but they weren't very emotionally attentive or weren't really able to be present emotionally. And I think that's really common in a lot of families of my generation, because my parents came out of wartime, so they were all in survival mode, right? So we were very just get on with it, you just got to do it,
Right.
yeah, you just got to do what you got to do, and there wasn't really much focus on how are you feeling,
Girls
or
needs. Sorry. Ah. Oh, excuse me. I'm
bless
sure that was
you.
cat hair. I hope I don't do it again. Sorry about that. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really wasn't aware of my emotional self until I was probably in my early 40s, actually.
Wow.
um yeah, that was a lot of my upbringing. I married at 19 with extremely low self-esteem and low self-worth. I didn't love him. I married him because he asked me, because I thought at that age that, wow, if someone asked me now, what if no one will ask me? Because that, in those days, like in the way that I was raised, that was your pattern. You grow up, you get married, you have children, that's what it was. And
Right.
there wasn't too much outside of that. That life. So I was like, what if, and I was like petrified that no one would find me worthy. No one would ask me to marry them. So I said yes to the first person that asked. And he was a very, very broken man. And we had 3 children, and I left him. He was suicidal and things like that as well. So, but probably don't want to go too much into that. I don't want to like traumatize any of your
Right. I
lovely
understand.
people in your group, but there was a whole lot of trauma in that relationship and a lot of abuse. And so when I was pregnant with my 3rd son, I decided that that was it, and I was leaving, and I moved to a place I knew nobody there, and raised my kids in this little coastal community in New Zealand, down on the east coast in a beachside community, and it was just so peaceful and lovely, and I absolutely loved it there. But I went on to actually, long story short, because it could go on, I went on to meet another guy who was also very emotionally abusive, and we were on and off for 8 years. And then I moved to Australia, and then we ended things when we got here. And after, very quickly, maybe even a year, maybe not even that, I hadn't healed from that relationship, and I was actually really broken. I couldn't really understand why. I was crying a lot uncontrollably, and just really just really in shock, I guess, that it had finally ended, even though this wasn't a good relationship. And another guy came along and sort of promised the world, and sort of saved me, really. But became a rescuer. If you understand the drama triangle, I was either a victim or I was a rescuer myself. So somebody else stepped into my triangle and became my rescuer, who soon became my abuser. So I found out within months of marrying him that he was seeing somebody else from his workplace. So it took me another nearly 2 years to be able to leave that relationship. And it just, he was just very neglectful, and wasn't really committed to our relationship. So yeah, I sort of spent a lot of time trying to get out of that. Yeah, so that's basically my experience of abuse and trauma, which has led me down the path of, um, understanding how it works and how to get out of it and how to grow through it. Often a lot of what I experienced turned into PTSD. And when I was going through it at that time, a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists and whatnot would say, like give you the diagnosis, but there wasn't a whole lot of guidance to get you through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so common now, this to be diagnosed with this, whereas back in the day, you had PTSD if you were physically injured and a trauma, a physical trauma. But, now we're understanding that this is what happens when you're in family abuse as well.
Well, emotional trauma is sometimes even worse than physical trauma.
That's right. Yeah.
It runs so much deeper. And well, I applaud you for pulling yourself out of that and moving forward from it. And I don't hear, what I love about listening to you talk about it is that I don't hear a victim in your voice. I hear a powerful woman who has found herself and found her power again and has really stepped into it and is shouting from the mountaintops of how to help other women do the same thing. That's so brave of you. It's the greatest of you to everything that you just told me and everything you've gone through, and to be able to talk about it with that much control and composure. And I don't know, I hear a confidence in your voice when you talk about it, because I know you've done the work and you've worked through it. And I know we're always on the path and we're always on the journey and we're always, continuing to heal, but I can hear a strength in your voice that I just admire. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, when we're on this growth path, and even now, it doesn't mean to say that you go through your healing journey and you get to this end point where you've healed completely, and and I think the saying of time heals wounds is true to an extent, but there's still areas where we can become quite stuck and afraid of stepping forward. And really, it's good to see the bigger picture, but it's also really important when you're really stuck in those moments to just ask, what small step can I take today? What's one more thing I can take towards that goal, so that it doesn't become so big, like I want to be, I hear a lot of women, and I remember feeling like this as well, like, why can't I just be through this already? Why can't I be already healed from this and I be happy on the other end? Yeah, so I know the frustration, and you just want it to happen straight away, because you want to meet that, you want to attract healthy relationships, or you're wanting to get into work that is also helping other women go through it, or whatever your thing might be. Is looking at, like, being patient with yourself and just looking at what's one more step I can take, because sometimes it can be really overwhelming and you fool yourself with doubt. Especially through abusive relationships, because you've been told all your life that you can't do this, you're useless, you're a dumb shit, you're a whatever it is. So then you have to work hard at undoing some of those beliefs. So sometimes that can be a little bit uncomfortable. So just one step, and then, one foot in front of the other. And then you're not going to end up saying, oh, 2 steps back, forward, 1 step back. It's always going to be a step forward. So just, sometimes
even if it's a little tiny micro step, I think that's so important to look back and see how far you've come. Even because I know this is common for my clients too. It's like they don't think they've improved. They don't think they've changed. They don't think they've done anything, and I'm constantly reminding them. It's like, that's why it's so important to recognize what I call your wins. It's like, a win for the week, whatever that is for you, and also too, I think it's difficult to sometimes the emotions that we have stuffed for so many years are so scary to think about facing, so
Yeah.
we just stuff them for so long, and they get stuck in those lower three chakras. And I see your,
Yeah.
chakras
Yeah.
behind you there. And
Yeah.
it's like all that stagnant, stored negative emotions that we carry around about ourselves. And it's like, that's what we need to release. And that
Yeah.
sometimes has to come out a little bit at a time, just a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. I do energy healing with my work as well, and I can tell you that I've not worked with one woman so far that has not had some energy or some stuck energy, we call it, I guess, around that first chakra,
Yeah.
because that first chakra is so connected to the inner child. And when we're doing inner child healing work, that's kind of what comes up, because that's our center for, or the very first memory we have of feeling secure and stable, and that sense of belonging and safety. And when we go through abuse, that's usually what's affected most.
Wow.
So there's always a lot of energy to clear from that first chakra when I do the energy healings on the clients that I work with too. So yeah, totally. It's
Oh, I love the
mm,
work that you do. I really do. I mean, it's so needed. So there are so many hurt people. Because the thing is that the saying hurt people, right? It's a cycle, and if we don't break that
yeah.
cycle, it gets passed on and on. So now you do energy healing, and you also do is it one-on-one work as well as how do you work with people? Tell me about that. How do you
Yeah,
serve
so
people?
the program that I run, it's called Irise,
Mm.
and it's just an 8-session program, and the first half of the program is all about healing, healing the trauma,
Yeah.
and working through different steps around that. And then the second part is all about creating the life that you want. And I use, like, your love for Joe Dispenza is also my love. So I use a
Yay.
lot of quantum techniques
Mm.
that have been founded on that sort of work. And that takes us through to the second half of the program. And that's, I think, where, the magic happens. And that's where you start to really, by the end of I guess through halfway through the program, you start to really hear that inner voice, the wisdom within your soul.
Mm.
And that's when you get to really, like, be able to define and call in the life that you want, and the life you've been called to as a woman in this world today. We've all been called to do some work somehow, somewhere, to make the planet a better place, I guess, and to improve and call in that same power into our own heart. So
And just that, I can imagine the feelings of, that freedom, that feeling of acceptance, that feeling of,
mm,
I don't know, just like you said, the self-compassion coming in, that feeling of flooding in. And, and also that I know for myself, when I really connect to source, and feeling that unconditional love that I know I can't screw up. Like, I can't do anything that would make me not lovable, that would make me not unconditionally loved. I mean, when you first, at least for me, when I first tapped into that, I mean,
mm,
I cried like a baby for I don't know how long. And then
yeah,
I was like, I wanted to shout it from the mountaintop. I'm like, I'm unconditionally loved. I can't screw this up. I mean,
yeah,
and that's, and that realization is, there's just something about that. I mean, it makes you stand up straighter. You just walk with more of a
yeah.
confidence. And I mean, just being able to help people tap into just even a little bit of that. It's just so powerful.
Yeah, it is, and that is my hope for everyone who I help, as or through that kind of guidance, is that they too really, I guess, discover that for themselves, and discover their own power and worth. Because when you've tapped into that, you just have that knowing, right? You just have that
Yeah.
peace and love. You're just walking around with it all the time, and nothing. This is the thing, is that people might have taken everything from you, but they can never take that away. When you've tapped into that piece of yourself, you
Oof,
you walk around with that. Like no one can take that off you.
yeah. Oof, that is so true. Sorry. That really touched me because, nobody can take that away from you. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so true. Wow. Oof, wow. That's so good. I love that. I love your method. I love, your process. And you said it's 8 sessions, that 8 weeks. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, it's very flexible. Some
Okay.
people are super busy with lots of things going on, so it's better to do that fortnightly or
Right, right. God.
don't say fortnightly, bi-weekly, every second week.
I actually
I've
knew what
been
that
told
meant.
it. Yeah, a lot of times I say that they're like, "What's fortnightly?" Okay, that must be Australian Kiwi word.
It
Yeah, so
is, and
yeah,
only because I know a lot of Australians. I know what that means. So
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So it's like kind of at your own pace.
Yeah, yeah. Some people like it every week. Some people like, some people can't wait and want to book in less than a week. It's like, hang on a minute, let's just give it a week. Let
Right.
things
Let
sink
it
in.
process.
Like, oh, let's do this again in 3 days. Wait on a minute.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool. Now, how I know you have your own group too, right? What's the name of your group?
yeah. So my group is just called Women of Worth.
Okay.
And you can probably find it easy just to look up Kazs Olive, and my group will be on my personal page to click through and join from there or
Okay.
message me. Yeah, whatever, if you're looking at wanting to know more.
Yeah, I mean, I know somebody's going to go over there and check out your group because you're just putting out some wonderful stuff. And I just have to share where your name that because this is something I wasn't familiar with until I met you. That Kaz is a nickname or like a short for, or did you make that up, or is that a common use?
I think it's pretty common.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, in New Zealand and Australia, especially Australia, like everyone wants to shorten everything.
Uh-huh.
So every name becomes like a shortened version of that name. Like no one really, like even Brittany will be Brit or Brits. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so
Yeah.
Kaz.
Simon will be Cy. Yeah. Kaz
Okay.
is Karen. So yeah.
I'm going to start calling my oldest sister Karen Kaz because I love
Yeah.
it.
Do it.
We'll see
Hopefully
how
she likes it too.
we'll see if she likes it. Well, my one sister, her name is Ruth, and we call her Bib. That's a long story, but I wonder what would Julie become? Jules,
Jules. It'll be Jules.
Jules, Jules.
Yeah.
All right, I like this. Something my friends do
Jules,
call me Jules. So.
Kaz. Yeah, I know. It's
All right.
just a thing here. Everything
Okay,
gets shortened. Yeah.
I love it. So do you
Yeah.
have? I would love from. Do you have something like a freebie you want to offer to anyone here in the group? Do you have something that you
Yeah,
want to put out there?
absolutely. I have a journal.
Oh,
It's absolutely beautiful and it really helps to give you a lot more clarity in your day, but also it really helps to I guess avoid and reduce the amount of anxiety you have going into your day. So it's called the Daily Life Journal.
love it.
So I can maybe send it to you. I don't know how you want to do that. And then you
Well,
can,
maybe is it something like in like a Google Doc, like I can put a link in or something like that,
it's
or
an
is it like a
attachment.
PDF?
Yeah, it's a PDF. So yeah,
Okay, yeah, send it to me and I'll put it in the comments underneath this video.
yeah, cool.
Along with
Excellent.
I'll put a link to your profile and your Women at Work group too. I'll just put all three of those underneath the
Okay.
if
Yeah,
you send it to me.
excellent.
See.
I would love to
Oh,
give that. Yeah.
okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming into my group and sharing your story, your wisdom, and the wonderful work that you're doing here in the world. So thank you for what you do.
Thanks for inviting me. I've really loved this conversation with you. I just feel like our hearts really connect with what we have to offer the world and what we have to share. And it's such a beautiful gift that you've got to give as well. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on your show.
It's been absolutely my pleasure. And I will go ahead and close out the live, but don't you go anywhere, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody.